This audio fanfic is rated T, which is the same as a movie rating of PG-13. Parental guidance recommended for all children under 13. This should be suitable for teenagers and adults. For more information on what the rating means, please go to www.esrb.com.
It was a cool, calm day, and Felicia and Jon were walking towards the airport. Felicia looked at Jon.
I'm so in love with him, Jon.
Jon replied,
But do you think he'll actually come back to you?
Felicia answered,
I know that he will come back. He made a promise to me. I know that he meant it, Jon.
Jon replied,
Okay. I just don't want to see you get hurt, Felicia.
Felicia answered,
Don't worry about me, Jon. I think I'm old enough to take care of myself.
Jon laughed and just smiled.
You think you're old enough to take care of yourself?
Felicia got angry with Jon.
I know that I'm old enough.
Jon replied.
Okay, calm down.
Jon and Felicia turned a corner, and a tall man dressed in all black walked towards them. The man smiled evilly.
So you two must be Jon and Felicia.
Felicia looked at the man.
Who are you and how do you know us?
The man replied,
I am TJ. It doesn't matter how I know who you are, for you both will be dead.
Jon and Felicia got into their fighting stance. Jon turned into his werewolf form.
Oh, we're not going down without a fight.
TJ threw off his jacket, revealing a large robotic shoulder, arm, and hand. He clenched his robotic hand.
Let's see what you've got.
Jon pushed forward with his feet and charged at TJ. TJ fired his robotic hand at Jon and grabbed him while he tried to dodge the robotic hand. TJ threw Jon across the street. When Jon landed on the ground, TJ's robotic hand turned into a machine gun. TJ fired, locked onto Jon, and waited for him to stand. But Felicia distracted him by kicking him in the back. TJ stumbled forward, but recovered. He turned around and rapidly fired on her. Felicia dodged his bullets with her cat-like agility. This gave Jon enough time to stand up and charge his wolf missile. Jon gathered up all of his dark energy and created a beam. He yelled,
Get out of the way, Felicia!
Felicia jumped away to safety as TJ turned towards Jon. Jon jumped into the air and descended towards TJ. Just then, a beam shaped like a wolf's head appeared in front of Jon's right foot. Jon made contact with TJ, sending him flying into a tree. TJ pulled himself off of the tree.
Is that all you've got?
Jon and Felicia were surprised to see that TJ survived Jon's attack. TJ threw his right hand in front of his body.
TKO beam!
TJ fired his TKO beam at Jon and Felicia, but Jon pushed Felicia out of the beam's way. When Jon was hit by the beam, it made him turn back into his human form and fly into a building. Jon fell off the wall and hit the ground. He lay on the ground, bleeding from TJ's attack. Felicia ran to Jon to check his pulse, tears running down her face. Felicia's tears hit Jon's shirtless body. Felicia started to feel anger towards TJ. She looked at TJ with great anger in her eyes. TJ laughed evilly.
So, the cat is pissed. I'm so scared.
Felicia ran towards TJ with her claws deployed. She swung her right paw towards him, but TJ dodged her attack. TJ gave an evil smile at Felicia as she tried to hit him. When Felicia threw another claw attack, TJ countered her attack with the TriStar Blast. Felicia flew into the air and hit the ground, hard. When she landed, TJ walked towards her. When he reached her, she did a spring kick. TJ stumbled backwards, but he shook off the effect of her attack. TJ put down his guard to shake off the effects of her last attack, and this gave Felicia an opening to attack with all her strength. Felicia jumped into the air and landed on top of TJ's chest. She dug her claws deep into his skin and started to scratch and tear at his face. TJ threw her off his body. Felicia landed on her feet and was ready to attack. TJ's blood hit the ground, and his face was all messed up by Felicia's attack. TJ started to laugh, his face healing rapidly. TJ threw his robotic hand towards Felicia and grabbed her before she could react. TJ started to crush her body. Felicia only showed pain with her face. A voice from the shadows said,
"That's enough."
TJ looked towards the shadow and saw 2 red eyes.
But Master, killing her would be much more fun.
Zero walked into the light.
I said, "That's enough, TJ."
TJ let go of Felicia and bowed before Zero.
As you wish, Master.
Zero walked to Felicia and picked her up.
Well, if you killed Felicia, you will be the one that I kill. You know that she's the only virgin Darkstalker, which we could only sacrifice to bring back Pyron.
TJ picked up his jacket and put it back on.
I wish to find my brother, Master.
Zero walked towards the shadows.
Not yet. First, let's get our sacrifice ready, before we do anything else.
TJ replied.
Yes, Master.
Zero and TJ walked into the shadows, leaving Jon bleeding to death. Jon lay there on the ground. That was until a young woman passed by and saw him lying there. She yelled,
"Call 911. Someone is hurt."
The young woman ran to Jon and checked his pulse. She found a weak pulse on his neck.
"It's going to be okay."
Jon looked at her, weakly, as she stayed next to his side. The ambulance turned the corner and finally reached them. The EMTs jumped out from the back of the ambulance and took out the stretcher. The EMTs bandaged Jon up and stopped the heavy bleeding from his chest and arms. They rolled him on his back. When they did this, the young woman gasped in surprise to see Jon's face. When he was on his stomach, she couldn't see his face. Now that he was on his back, she saw his handsome face. She blushed as the EMTs lifted the stretcher into the ambulance. Jim, one of the EMTs, looked at the woman.
"Do you want to come to the hospital?"
The woman replied.
"Yes, please."
The young woman stepped into the back of the ambulance. Jim closed the doors, and the ambulance raced towards the nearest hospital. As the ambulance raced through the streets of England, turning the corner of 23rd Street and Kew Avenue, the hospital was in view and was only 2 to 3 blocks away. The ambulance turned on St. Luke Street and slowed down and passed by the emergency entrance, but only to back up to the doors. The ambulance doors opened, and the EMTs pulled out the stretcher with Jon on it. The young woman stepped out of the ambulance and followed the EMTs through the automatic opening doors. The young woman was stopped outside the ER doors. Jim stood in front of her.
"You need to stay here, in the waiting room, miss."
The young woman replied.
"All right."
The young woman took a seat as Jim walked through the automatic opening doors. Jim walked back to the ambulance. Meanwhile, in the ER itself, tubes and wires ran from and towards Jon's body. The doctors and nurses surround him as they sewed Jon's injuries, cleaned up his cut, and bandaged his arm wound. Life started to come back to Jon. As the condition of Jon went from critical to good, he was moved from the ER to room 120 on the 2nd floor. Nurse Jonan walked up to the young woman.
"Are you the woman who came in with a man just a couple of minutes ago?"
The young woman said.
"Yes, why?"
Jonan replied.
"We moved him to the 2nd floor. Would you like to see him?"
The young woman replied.
"Yes, please."
Jonan answered.
"Then follow me."
The young woman stood up as Nurse Jonan walked away. She followed her all the way to room 120. The young woman walked to Jon as Nurse Jonan stepped out and shut the door. The young woman sat down and took John's hand.
Hey there, handsome. I don't know if you can hear me, but here goes nothing. I like you, even though I don't know your name. So, please don't die on me.
The young woman put her hand next to him. She sat there next to him, wasting time, waiting for John to wake up. She fixed her shirt and brushed her hair from her face. John's hand moved a little, and the young woman pulled her seat closer. She checked his pulse on the monitor, and his pulse started to race. Just then, John sat up.
Felicia!
The young woman jumped up and back. She thought,
Must be his girlfriend.
John looked around.
Where am I?
The young woman replied.
Calm down, you're in a hospital.
John looked at the young woman.
Who are you?
The young woman answered.
My name is Jane, and what's yours?
John replied.
My name is John. It's nice to meet you, Jane.
Jane replied.
So, who is Felicia?
John gave her a surprised look.
Felicia's my friend. She was the one with me when I had this great anger with the world. She was the only one who trusted me.
Jane replied.
So, she's your girlfriend, isn't she?
John chuckled.
If she was my girlfriend, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I like her as a friend, but not as a girlfriend.
Jane replied.
So, you mean you won't mind me doing this?
Jane kissed John on the mouth and pulled away slowly. John was stunned by her kiss. Jane smiled.
I just want to tell you that I would like it if you were my boyfriend, John.
John replied.
You don't know much about me, Jane. Are you sure that you want to be my girlfriend?
Jane answered.
Yes, I'm sure.
John smiled at her.
Looks like you like to gamble with life.
Jane blushed.
Only when I have to.
John smiled at Jane.
I also see that you're not easy to reject.
Jane got up close to John's face.
I see what I like and I get it.
John replied.
Looks like you're my girlfriend now.
Jane answered.
It looks that way, John.
Jane slowly pulled John close to her and gave him a kiss. John was surprised to find himself with a human girlfriend.